All right, welcome back to the GORUCK Show. I'm Blaine.
I'm Jason.
And this week we're going to talk about the challenge.
The GORUCK Challenge.
Specifically the GORUCK Challenge. Well, it's a big part. It's a big part of what we do. Obviously, I think we could make the argument that GORUCK wouldn't even be here today were it not for the challenge. So, yes or no?
I would say true story. And so here's kind of just to catch up, the challenge is based on Special Forces training. But before the challenge sort of dominated the brand of GORUCK, there was the 2.5 years of building and designing what became GR1 and the other original rucksacks. And what I found out in that process is that gear is sort of pretty boring. I mean, I really like it, and I like excellence. And so wanted to build something that was extremely high quality and all that stuff, but I'm not really suited for a life of doing nothing but gear all the time.
This is really interesting to me, by the way, because I always had the least gear of any guy on my team. Like, I am not a gear person. I'm not a tech person. You've been to my house. I have very few things.
Mm-hmm.
It's ironic that you and I now are trying to run this company that sells this really great gear, because neither of us really, our whole lives have ever been like into gear.
Yeah.
So what the hell are we doing here?
I don't know. Show's over, guys. We're cutting bait. No, just
more beer, less show.
So anyway, so after all that though, I also hate to lose. And so I had all of my money tied up, all of my money, and then some other people's money tied up into all these things that I really believed in. I mean, GR1, it's a great ruck. But if you start a business, awareness is king, and we had none. So hits equal sales. If nobody finds out about you, there's no hits, aka there's no sales, and you have to make money to stay in business. So I don't know anything, and the year was 2010, and I don't know anything about Google AdWords or Facebook or any of that sort of wizardry, right? What I did know was my background. That was it, right? And so, the gear stuff came sort of naturally just because I'd seen so much stuff fail. And we got a lot of stuff when we were at group. So you see a lot come through, and you see what fails and what works and what guys gravitate toward and what they don't. Mm-hmm. And so, but then I have all this stuff and I have no money, and I need to figure out a way to make the company grow. So came up with this idea that became the GORUCK Challenge. And the main premise was to say, was that I was going to take pictures of the gear in use. It was never really about the event itself, because I thought only sort of masochists would sign up for something. I mean, the original advertising was something like, 12 miles, a backpack stuffed with bricks, led by a Green Beret, details not forthcoming, right? I mean, there was no...
Check the whiteboard for updates.
Yeah, exactly. There was no way to kind of Google it, because even if Google were perfect, it's not drilling into my head yet, because I don't even have it really, worked out. Yet. And so, September 25th, 2010, had, 13 or so people show up for the class 1 of the challenge in San Francisco. And, sort of at that moment, the energy that existed from those, they were crazies and weirdos and masochists and all of the above that would show up for something like this, sort of sight unseen. And just, there was such an energy that was missing in my life at that time that I certainly did not get from figuring the gear stuff out. And it was just about the people. And so that became, right or wrong, and I would argue right, but that became the driver, the engine for what GORUCK is, what it became. And just emotionally, I would not have stuck with this if this were just about, how to sell GR1 to the government or something like that. It's just, it's just nothing against it. That's just not for me.
Yeah, no, well said. Because gear, as I've thought more about what I said just a while ago, I'm not a gear guy. I don't think you're a gear guy either. But I like to do stuff. I don't like stuff, but I like to do stuff. But some things require some gear, right? So like, I have one guitar. It's a $2,500 guitar, but I have one guitar, and I bought it like 15 years ago, and I still pick it up almost every single day. So I couldn't play the guitar without it, but I would prefer to have one
single dude with $2,500 to burn, and you know.
It's much more complex than that, actually, but I'll save that story for another time. But it's the same thing. Like, I like to surf, so I have a surfboard. You know, I like to mountain bike, so I have a mountain bike. I would prefer, if I want to do really awesome stuff, to have, you know, just the stuff I need to do it. And I'd like to only have one, so that I'm not cluttering up my life with stuff, but I have like maximum opportunity to do stuff. And for me, you just kind of can't have one without the other.
Your roots also are not, and then we need to get to the challenge, but your roots are more like mine, that you're more frugal than not.
Yeah, I've been accused of other words.
Yeah,
but yeah, financially responsible is the one I like to use.
Jenny describes it other ways. You know, his wife Jenny, who's got it.
There's one.
And so, look, I mean, it's just one of those things where, to sort of close the loop on the gear and then transition more to the challenge, you know, both were born of the Special Forces mindset. Both were sort of natural products that were inspired by the gear I'd had in Special Forces, and then that we'd had in Special Forces, and then by the type of training that we went through in Special Forces. And by the way, the type of training that we did together as teams. So not just the type of training that you show up to the Q course and you're trying to become a Green Beret, but the camaraderie that you feel when you're on a team and you still go do hard stuff together.
Yeah, I mean, the training was hard, by the way. Like, the Q course was hard and Ranger School's hard and all that stuff's hard, but I would argue that some of the stuff that my team did when I was actually on a team and everyone had earned their badges and tabs and funny hats was as hard as some of the stuff that we did in the courses, if not harder. I can remember one specific time being at Fort AP Hill, Virginia, and it's like sleeting, kind of like raining sideways, turning into sleet, turning into snow, sort of weird stuff. And it was just my team there. We had no one like OCing us or looking over us. But we had determined that we were going to do this certain course of instruction and we were going to do these exercises that were sort of like, you do it during the day, then you do it at night. It was like this reconnaissance stuff, right? And we went out there overnight and it was just freezing ass cold and everyone was getting wet and we're trying to surveil this target, and what we were working on was like attaching optics to some cameras and like, you know, figuring out how to do all these things and then how to take photos and send them back using these computers and blah, 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 right? And I thought Eric, who you've met, was gonna die at one point. He was like shaking and like going hypothermic. And we're still out there like idiots.
It's funny how I think that's funny, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
remember
like
that time that you almost hyped out?
I default back to team room stuff. Oh, it sucked that bad. That's so awesome, right?
But it was miserable.
Yeah.
Terribly miserable. No one was making us do it, but it was just like, that's what you do. If you want to be good, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. And because, look, it's going to be uncomfortable in Afghanistan. It's going to be uncomfortable when it's 130 degrees in Iraq. So
I also love your story about nobody's too good to low crawl.
Yeah, so like the very brief version of that story is that like, we would low crawl. When I was on a team, we would, you know, every range was a stress shoot.
But you're already a Green Beret.
Yeah, Green Berets don't need to learn how to low crawl. We're Green Berets. We can like just shoot from the hip and wear baseball caps and all that. That's bullshit. Like that is not, at least that wasn't the case on my team. Every range we practiced fundamentals and then we did stress shoot, which meant you ran around, you did burpees, you crawled, you know, we had dummy rounds and mags. You had to deal with the fog of war, an elevated heart rate, sweat running into your eyes and all that stuff, because that's the way that gunfights actually happen in reality. So you have to be willing to put yourself, not just once to kind of earn your badge or like a patch, maybe in the GORUCK scenario, right, which we can talk about, but you're continually having to earn it and put yourself
We will get to patches.
Yeah.
Yes, it will happen.
You have to be in that uncomfortable environment on a regular basis so that you remember what it's like, so that you become comfortable in uncomfortable environments. And then you have both the shared hardship and the camaraderie, which you were describing, which is great for building a team, but you also have the mindset and the skills and just that ability to become comfortable in uncomfortable environments that makes you perform well when you need it most. So yeah, I mean, you're never too cool to low crawl, because when it's zinging over your head, guess what you're doing, or what you better be doing?
Yeah.
You better be low crawling.
So, I mean, ultimately, comfort is the enemy. And, you know, we as people, and I mean Homo sapiens, have figured out a way to make our lives so comfortable. We're so dominant in the food chain that we can literally, I mean, you have people, they can just sit in their house and never, ever leave.
Have you ever seen Idiocracy?
No.
So most of you guys have probably seen it. It's like Idiocracy, right?
I feel like John Travolta in, no, I don't have TV.
Yeah. Idiocracy. So it's like basically the dumbing down of, we're getting lazier and lazier because things are getting more and more convenient, and like some years in the future we're all just a bunch of morons. And like the best part of the movie is this guy, he's sitting on his couch just sort of, dumb and fat and happy watching TV. And he finally has to get up off the couch to do something. And there's a toilet seat like built into his couch because like that's how bad it's gotten. He's just like taking a dump while eating Cheetos, while watching TV, and probably like Amazon Uber Prime is like delivering his food to his couch.
That is just not how to live a life. I mean, you
No-
have
no
a
way to
body, you have a mind. Put them both to use.
And we've got an opportunity for you to do that.
We do.
It's called the GORUCK Challenge.
In fact, you just recently did it, and that's a big deal. Let's hear your full AAR of your first tough challenge.
Full AAR.
Well, full AAR, the video version, the podcast version.
Yeah, so the abbreviated version of the AAR, I would say this. The first takeaway for me is that people are great. I mean, you show up and it starts at 9 o'clock at night, and most of us had been at work all day, right? So you go to work all day, you go home, you pack.
You didn't take the day off?
You maybe have some dinner.
What?
Unfortunately not. And so it starts at 9 p.m. and then you start carrying Zodiacs and doing flutter kicks and getting hit with fire hoses, and that will wake you up. Like 30 minutes into the event, you're getting cold water shot down the back of your neck by a fire hose, and you've got a Zodiac over your head. Like that lets you know what's coming. And everyone suddenly their game face is on, which is great. It's just like football. You're nervous until you go out there and you make a tackle. Then it's like,
Yep.
all right, you get hit in the face once and you're good to go. But what I was talking about was the people. So you're there and everyone at first is kind of like, I don't know what to make of this. There's some flutter kicks. There's these boats that we don't know how to inflate. And this water's really cold. But, by midnight, by 1 or 2 in the morning, it's getting tough. The boats are getting heavy. The miles are getting long. Everyone's chafed from the sand or whatever. And people start really pulling together. And I thought that for me was easily the biggest takeaway from the whole deal was, I knew a few people that were doing the challenge with me, most of whom I'd never met. And it was pretty miserable. Like I've been uncomfortable plenty of times and it was not fun. It was hard. And many more times than not, it was pulling people together and they were helping each other out. They were, relieving somebody under the boat, or they were helping to carry something that was heavy. And for me, that just solidified what I already know about the GORUCK community, which is that it's really, at the end of the day, just about the people. We can talk about bags, we can even talk about the challenge as an event, but the event is only really the people that make it up. It's the cadre and the class.
Because it's the kind of person that wants to do this kind of thing.
Yeah, who shows up at 9 o'clock at night on a Friday night after working all day to get their ass kicked for 12 hours until the
Hey, we can do this all night.
Yeah, which we did. We were just talking about this before. What I thought unique about this challenge.
I love GRTs.
Yeah.
I just love you guys. It's awesome.
Yeah, because like the boat is just like this metaphor for life in some cases, right?
The boat, the log.
Yeah, the log doesn't lie, right? Same, and the Zodiac certainly doesn't lie because it's 8 people or 10 people carrying it, and you kind of have to work together and do all this stuff. But I suspect as hard as it is doing the GORUCK Challenge, I think a lot of people appreciate the opportunity just to put their head down and do hard work. This is sort of what it represents for me, is that, and we were just talking about this yesterday when we were riding bikes, I don't know if you remember, but there's plenty of opportunity to sit at my desk and look at spreadsheets or be on phone calls and try to make sales or whatever. There's plenty of opportunity to wash the dishes, to change diapers, to mow the lawn. Like
A lot of diapers.
Look, I don't resent any of those things, at least anymore, which is another story. But all those things are great parts of life. But there's plenty of opportunity to be a domesticated, comfortable human being. And I think a lot of us, depending on what cloth we're cut from, can get pretty bored of that. That can get pretty stale. And maybe you grow a little resentful of it. Maybe you just feel a little stale. Call it whatever you want. But I feel like a lot of us, and probably all the people that were out there Friday night humping Zodiacs over the Volano Bridge, they're there for a reason. And I don't know all the reasons, and it would be hard probably for me to put a finger on mine sometimes, but we need this stuff in our life. And it doesn't have to be the GORUCK Challenge, but for all of us to have the mortgage and the job and the family and stuff, look, those things are great, but we all need an opportunity to be a little bit more human. And by that I mean like naturally human, like at the core of our being. Like you need to carry heavy things sometimes. You need to sweat sometimes. You need to figure out a way to work together with other human beings to accomplish a task that you can't accomplish on your own. That's primal stuff, and I'm convinced that at the DNA, kind of the cellular level, we need that stuff. So
we can be so
part of that.
cerebral and we can sit in our pods and, newsflash. The iPhone X, is it the iPhone X or the iPhone 10?
I don't know. What's the answer to that?
Andy, what's the answer? It's both. The iPhone, both X and
the
10,
best.
is not going to make you happy, right? The iPhone 47 is not going to make you happy, nor is the latest round of Google updates or your buddy the Joneses' perfect life that they display on Facebook. None of that is going to make you happy, even if it's
What about
your
Instagram
perfect life
followers?
on
Instagram followers make me pretty happy. No?
10 million Instagram followers, man, now I'm complete. It's not going to make you happy.
Dang.
Doing awesome stuff with awesome people, that makes you happy. And so
That's a fact.
that's a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of how when you're describing how Eric was about to hype out and die, and I start laughing, and we're not talking about war and and obviously he survived and all of that stuff. It's kind of funny because it's funny because I know and I've been in situations like that, and everybody wants that story, but nobody wants to do the stuff to get the story, because if you say, hey, you might have to go do something hard. Like, how many times have you seen the pills out there and they say, hey, take this pill and you don't have to change your lifestyle. Just take the pill and then you'll lose weight, your skin will be perfect,
And if you sign up for my multi-level marketing system, you can actually make money while doing it. And quit your
and then
job.
get your friends to take the pill and sort of do the band
Win the
exercises
cruise.
and all of that stuff. And you don't even you can do it in your house. Just attach it to the base of the TV board or whatever.
We're all going to be millionaires.
Yeah, easy. Everything is easy if you listen to everything, and it's complete and utter bullshit, right? The human body, it needs to get out and do awesome things. The human spirit needs to do those things with other awesome people doing those same awesome things. We are communal in nature, and that it's a primal desire that we have is to do that kind of stuff. So getting out and doing something like whatever it is that's hard, a GORUCK challenge certainly being one of them, it fills us up.
Yeah, so there's the Kennedy quote that you say all the time, which is that we go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard.
So people say, why would you ever do something like that? Like, because it's hard. That's why.
Yeah, and if you want to take it a layer deeper, it's because doing hard things does a lot of other things for you. Like it's just a fact. It helps you build confidence. It helps you be a better communicator with other people so that you can work as a team. It helps you overcome your own doubts. It helps you break
It raises
through
your
perceived
bar.
limitations. Yeah, absolutely.
Other stuff that used to seem hard, now it seems easy.
Yeah, it gives you great perspective, which, I tell you what, having sand in your crotch at 3 o'clock in the morning,
Just grinding like this, right?
that means that will give you
Because
some
you
perspective.
forgot all the tricks about the lube at the top of the crack and it funnels through, or you just I've been rusty too. I did that. What was it? At one of them, I forgot my first one that Dan led. I love you, Dan. He, it was a pretty good whooping, right? And I forgot to cut my toenails, and I lost 3-4 toenails at the end. It's just stupid stuff that you would always do. In the Q course or whatever, you're looking at your feet every day. Like if you're in business and you're looking at a spreadsheet or your email inbox is your feet when you're in the Q course. You look at them all the time, right? And I had just completely forgot.
Mostly with wonder and horror.
Yeah, both. How in the world are these things still holding up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but this, so maybe let me ask you this then. So there are a lot of hard things you can do out there, and I think if it's your thing, right, if it suits your fancy, then go do those things. But why is the GORUCK challenge different? What's different about doing it on a team in sort of this team building environment? Because you can't carry a log by yourself, you can't carry a Zodiac by yourself. What's the value in doing it that way as opposed to running a marathon or doing an OCR where you're kind of, there are other people doing it, but
I've done both of
individual
those.
effort.
I've done a lot of OCRs. I've done a marathon. I don't really want to do another marathon, but if I had to, I would. So what makes it different is that it is, well, first off, it's led by a GORUCK cadre who is current or former decorated combat veteran of special operations, special forces. So the part practically though that means is that it's a true team event. You don't know exactly what's coming at any time, but you will always be together. It's more like life than life is not a series of obstacles that have been built up for you in the week prior to your showing up. Life is sort of more on the fly. It happens, right? Yep. I mean, Murphy is always kind of around, and good stuff happens, bad stuff happens. It's about who you're with. And so there is no route published. There's no sort of set distance or time. The outcome is that you will turn into a team. And so there's performance expectations of the team that the cadre outlines, and then sort of holds you to that. But that's the ultimate difference. I mean, I've done all of them, Tough Mudder and Spartan and all these things. And you show up and you show up, you drive 4 hours outside of town, right? It's listed in the town, and you drive 4 hours outside of the town, right? Because that's how the marketing department said that they could get more people to show up. And then you show up, and you're there with a couple people in your car where you paid $20 to park because they held you hostage, because there's nowhere else to park within 10 country miles now. And so,
Jason, I just want you to tell me how you really feel about this. Okay, go ahead, proceed.
Okay, I'll stop taking a stand. Okay.
No.
So then you eventually get there, and you're there with a couple people that you're with, and there are a couple funnel points that force teamwork in Tough Mudder's case, or Spartan is a lot more individual, right? I mean, it's timed, it's a race, it's Spartan race. Tough Mudder being more camaraderie driven, but there's only a couple funnels that force you to work with somebody else. And so people being people, what we do is we default to what's comfortable. And what's comfortable is, I don't want to bother the other people around me, and I know the people that I came with, but I don't know perfect strangers. We take that in about the first, you tell me, 30 seconds of the challenge, and everybody is together doing all the same stuff. You're crawling around with over, around, whatever, each other. You're in the surf, you're locking arms, and you develop a true sense of camaraderie with the people who are there, because you have no other option. There is no option to go slower or go faster, or to take a break, or to do the burpees that the judge at the obstacle tells you to or not, or whatever the case may be, right? You are forced to work together, and that's the unique role of the cadre, who's very highly trained and very highly seasoned to be able to build teams in a way that has created so many outcomes at GORUCK challenges.
Yes, I mean, the Special Forces cadre have been trained, and in many cases, in most cases, have had to develop relationships and form teams and get people to perform across cultures, across languages, and all these other things. So they can, as hard as it may seem, they can get a group of knucklehead Americans that show up at 9 p.m. to work as a team. But that's another thing that really struck me about doing the challenge this weekend, is that, it's a very diverse group of people. So you show up and you start looking around, and there's men and there's women, which is obviously different than your Special Forces training. And then there are people who are really fit, and there are people
these days.
Oh, well, maybe different now. At least
still almost all men.
But there's men and there's women, and there's people that are really fit, and there's people that aren't nearly as fit, and there's people that are like GORUCK gurus that have done a million challenges, and they know exactly how to make certain things work at sticking points, and there's people it's their first one. And I really ended up appreciating that a lot, because in my brain it's like default switches back to everybody here is expected to be a high performer and all these things, but look, that's not life. And I think the benefit of doing things like
Type A alpha male looks a certain way, can carry a log for 10 miles, whatever the case may be. And at GORUCK, I think that there's just a lot of magic that comes from treating everyone equally, right? I mean, everybody sort of shows up, and we don't care if you're, male, female, military, civilian, black, white, young, old, gay, straight, keep listing them out, right? We don't care. Can you lift the log? Can you lift the log and do the work?
Well, and here's a better question to ask.
That's an upgrade. That's a real upgrade. Yeah, moving to some delicious Budweiser.
You guys caught me finishing up my hydration there a little bit. Sorry. But What I thought was a great lesson for me personally, and for I think a lot of the people that were a little bit more experienced or were maybe a little bit more fit in the class, is that these people are now part of your team. And like, you don't have the luxury of like looking down on them and saying, why did this person show up? They're not as prepared, or they're not as fit, or whatever. Like, guess what? They're on your team now, and you have a role to play. For one, you may have to pick up a little bit of slack, so get used to that. But for two, you have some responsibility to them as your teammate to help them get through the challenge.
This might
as
be
well.
the most significant challenge they've ever done in their entire life.
Yeah.
And if you scoff at them because you're stronger or what, I mean, how are you going to treat your...
Well, does life work that way?
Does life work that way? I mean, if you're the type of person who's just going to do that to people around you that can't carry a log as far, it's that quote you were talking about earlier, you're going to go not very far, right?
Right, so the quote is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that's one little metaphor for, I think, the GORUCK Challenge relative to some other endurance events or things, is that, look, you're not trying to go as fast as possible. You're not racing to win as an individual. You're trying to accomplish a goal, a pretty hard one, by the way, as a team. And in order to do that, you've got to figure out a way to get your arms around all the different people on your team, those who are more or less experienced and those who are taller and shorter and slower and faster and all of that. So it was good for me because it really forced me to be a great follower, because Surf Hog obviously he did not let me lead anything. He put me in the cone of silence for a while and said, hey, you're not allowed to help organizing this stuff. So I was like,
which is
okay.
exactly, that's your challenge.
Right, it was great for me, actually.
Because, I mean, you could roll in and just sort of fix all the problems, but then other people won't get as much out of it.
Yeah, and so some people needed to be put in the role of a leader because, maybe they don't get that. Maybe they're, an accountant or whatever. They work in a cubicle and they just do their thing every day at their desk, and they haven't been challenged to be a leader in those kinds of...
When I'm a cadre, I try to find... So here's one of my favorite cadre... my favorite tricks, if you will, is I find the most introverted person who shows up, because this is an under-promise, over-deliver kind of thing. You're going to get a lot more than you pay for. Here's an example of how, right? Outside of your comfort zone, comfort is the enemy. And this is not a physical thing, but at a certain point, the people start bonding together, right? And you start to really care about the people who are there with you, and you want to sort of make things work so that people are generally happy. Well, I like to, around 3 or 4 in the morning, find one of the introverts who probably doesn't want to be in charge and has probably never volunteered for it, and I like to make him a team leader, right? And then what I like to do is, after some iterations, you take the team and put them in some excruciatingly painful thing like, inchworm push-ups or caterpillars or whatever. And then I tell the team leader, I go, hey, this is how this is going to work. And I remember very clearly doing this in South Beach, Miami, at one of the classes in front of, I think, the only strip club in South Beach. We were right in front, right? And just to make it really awkward and awesome. And I go, okay, TL, team leader, I'm going to smoke the entire class until you go find a complete and utter stranger to tell me a joke that makes me laugh. The horror and the paleness of his face was very, very stark. And
that's borderline cruelty. Okay.
Yeah, it was great though, and so eventually he did it. There were some iterations where he went to people and then it just sort of, they told bad jokes, not necessarily his fault, but you got to keep trying, right? And so, they're doing the up down, and it's excruciating for the people who are in it, but I'm really motivating him because hey, if you say, hey, do this or else you have to do the push-ups, that's not motivation. Hey, stand here, you're not going to suffer physically. Everybody but you is, until you can get over this mental obstacle, this thing that you don't want to do mentally. It's not a physical challenge, it's a mental challenge that you have to get over. And so eventually he did it. Someone came over and told me a joke, and I laughed, and then everyone was really happy and proud of him, and he was the hero, right? And he's one of those guys that contacts me 15 times after the event and says thank you, and nobody's ever done that before. And so it's the ability to kind of read the people that are there and push them way outside their comfort zones, because if you don't take something back from your challenge to your daily life, then you've missed the point. If you showed up to prove to everybody how strong you are and how many push-ups you can do, you've missed the point. Because push-ups, anyone can say at any boot camp, whatever, which the challenge was never going to be a boot camp. It was never going to be that vibe. Just, it's not really my vibe. And so, and so it also doesn't work. You tell people they suck enough times, they might show up a little bit, but then they just go away. Nobody wants to deal with that. So you have to take the lessons back with you.
Yeah, so I think you can't, to your point, there's a sweet spot here where you can't be fully physically prepared to be successful at a challenge, or in life for that matter. Like, there's no level of physical fitness that's going to make up for your inability to be a good follower, to be a good listener, to be a good teammate, to collaborate with other people, any of that. On the other tail, because everything in life's a bell curve, right, Jason?
Everything's a bell curve, Blaine.
On the other tail, you also don't want to just be a liability to your team all the time either. So, like, I think there's, and it's a pretty big sweet spot. It's the fat part of the curve. Most people could do a tough or could do a challenge if they really wanted to.
The human body is got millions of years of evolution proving to you that you can do a tough challenge.
Yeah, exactly. So, look, don't show up as the person that you know. You know when you show up that you're going to be a liability to the team, and everyone's going to have to pick up your slack.
No, so let's hedge it, because everybody thinks they're going to be a liability. I mean, this is perceived as a very, very, very scary thing for a lot of people.
So,
I mean,
yeah,
led by some
let's hedge
SEAL
that by
or
saying,
some Green Beret, and he's probably going to kill me and all that stuff. I mean, the things that go through, the ammunition that people find on the GORUCK site to justify their excuses for not showing up and doing something awesome are almost damn near infinite.
Yeah, so I won't take back what I said, but I like the hedge.
Let's hedge it.
There's a big fat sweet spot between, showing up completely unprepared, where your team's going to have to totally carry you. And by the way, let me alter that a little bit. Physically, most people are prepared. What really drives me
we're really
crazy,
walking this back now.
Yeah, so let me throw this at you. What you really don't want to be is the person who's at the strong end of the curve, but you're not mentally willing to do the work. Those are the worst. So I would say somebody who shows up sort of physically underprepared, but is a good teammate and is willing to do whatever they can do, is a much better asset to the team than somebody who shows up and is really physically strong and tough, but is trying to get away with only doing 50% of their capacity or whatever. Like, I think you got to be willing to put out at something close to your capacity if you want to get from the challenge what you're supposed to get out of it, and to be the best teammate you can be.
Okay, so let's because I agree with you. So I've seen it a lot where people show up, but I'll sort of take it a slightly different route and say I see a lot of people show up for the wrong reasons. They show up because they want to say they did this hard thing, or it's about them, basically, right? And so those are the guys that usually are doing so many perfect push-ups. They're just destroying the welcome party, right? And as a cadre, I'm watching that, and I'm saying they're either in really good shape or they're going to crash and burn. And so if out of the gates your motivation is yourself and defeating the welcome party, and the welcome party is just basically, like a few hours of exercises or whatever, a couple hours of exercises, to sort of prove that you want to be there, flutter kicks and push-ups, whatever the cadre sort of puts you through that sort of helps you gel with your team. Makes you uncomfortable together is basically the formula. And so what I would caution against is I don't know, blowing your load too early, right? Is that the right way to say it?
Always.
I think it is, right?
Always
I think that's
good
the right
advice.
way to say it. And so, the guys and it's usually the guys, because there's, in my experience, at the challenge, there's just a little bit more pride. I'm so strong, I'm so tough, I can do this all day.
Well, here's the thing. So, I think the person you're describing is doing a million perfect push-ups, right? But what is that same person doing 3 hours later when we need relief under the log?
Yeah, so that's...
So like save your maximum output for when your team needs it, not for when it's an individual effort type thing. By all means, figure out a way to sham a little bit on the flutter kicks or the push-ups.
That's my point.
But
if the cadre's not looking, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
That's right. But Yeah, so you can cheat yourself, or you can even cheat the cadre a little bit if you want to. Like, look, it's all part of the game. But don't cheat your teammates. That's my point,
what I'm
I guess,
getting
is what
at.
I'm trying to say.
That's
Okay.
what I'm getting at.
We beat around the bush a little bit there, but
Yeah.
I think we arrived.
Don't cheat your teammates. But the point is don't be a young rattlesnake that shows up and all your venom's gone in the first hour. That's not going to behoove your team later, because it really is. I mean, I had this one couple do an early Chicago event. I think it was like 47 or 48. And we're drinking a beer. It's amazing that they like you as a cadre at the end of this, right? But they do.
By the way, the cadre all have that mandate. Like if your class doesn't
Yeah.
like you by the end, you've done something wrong.
And so we're drinking a beer at the bar after, and she goes, childbirth is for beep. Like it starts with a P, something like papaya, right? And she's like, so we'll just say it like childbirth is for papayas, right? And I'm like, wow, that's saying something. I will never be able to say that, but you did, after the whatever 12 hours that it was. And it's pretty cool to see people come the full arc, but you also don't want to be the person that all of a sudden really early on isn't very mature, that you're in it for the wrong reasons, you all your venom's gone, and then you're all crickets at 3 a.m. and all you want to do is be Bravo right rifle in the military speak, or you can't, once you have that flag up front, you're not letting go of it, and you're hoping that nobody shows up and says, hey, we need you to take another ruck. And in fact, you're hoping that someone wants to take your ruck for you, right? That doesn't work. So save some of your energy. If this is your first event, it's a long time that you're out there, and so you don't want to do everything right away.
So you mentioned being in it for the wrong reasons or for the right reasons. What, in your estimation, are the right reasons to do a GORUCK challenge? Or what should you expect? What should you want to get or expect to get out of the experience of the challenge? And maybe it's different for different people, depending on where they're at in life. But what are we trying to deliver to them? Why would you show up?
So first off, I think setting awesome goals is the key to victory in life. Set a goal, train for it, and do it. It makes the lesser stuff seem not as important. It's how we get, it's why grandparents are the greatest race of people on the planet, is because they've got a lot of wisdom and they've earned it by living more. So the more you live, you can do it in quality, quantity, or both. And this is a lot of quality living in one night. You get a leadership laboratory, you get to permission to fail, try new stuff, push yourself to the limit, and you get to be a part of something where you're part of that bridge between the military and the civilian worlds. And so you've got a Special Forces cadre who's leading the event, who, by the way, is working on the home front now in a way providing value to people that is helping us as Americans understand what it's like to serve in a time of war, because you're getting a lot of stories, you're getting a lot of perspective from someone who's been there and done that. So, everyone supports the troop, and God bless America for it, for just, we love our soldiers and our sailors and our airmen and our Marines. We love them all in America, and it's awesome, right? Now, sometimes you need to get out there and learn a little bit more about what exactly that entails. How many people have ever met a Navy SEAL or met a Green Beret?
Well, how many people have met a Navy SEAL in a bar or in real life?
Probably,
Because every tough guy in a bar is a
Oh, I
Navy
see.
SEAL.
Yeah,
And that's not the fault of the Navy SEALs, by the way. We love you guys. That's the fault of the bros out there that are claiming to be Navy SEALs in bars. You know who you are. Stop doing that. You didn't shoot bin Laden, and I know it.
Oh, we know who shot bin Laden. Ask him, he'll tell you.
Yeah.
So anyway, you've got this opportunity to be a part of what we view as important in America, which is that bridge between the military and the civilian worlds. And sort of, instead of doing what I did basically growing up and never really talking to anybody, including the members of my family, by the way, about their military service, and there was a couple of them, but it wasn't a part of my life as a kid. And so, my sons and our kids will have a different upbringing because they'll be more exposed to it, but more people should be exposed to it. And so this is a very difficult and challenging way to get more exposure to what it's like to serve and serve at a really high level. So, you set goals, you meet awesome people that also set goals that are living locally to you, which is why so many lifelong friendships have been formed at Challenges, marriages and all of that type of stuff. But, you also get the opportunity to be a part of what we view as a really important movement to build that bridge.
Yeah, I would say that most people, certainly not everybody, but most people have arbitrarily put limits on their potential or what they can achieve. Whether it's,
If we're talking about selection, you say they self-select. They say, nope, I can't.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great phrase. I think most people self-select, and by that, we mean there are people coming up short of their potential, not because of their circumstances so much as their own expectations. And I think the GORUCK Challenge, it's not the only way by any stretch, but it is a great way for people to just smash their own expectations and get so far outside their comfort zone in some cases to where when the sun comes up the next morning and they get their patch, they now realize that they can do so much more than they thought they could just 12 hours ago.
We prove
That's an incredibly powerful thing, because you take that attitude to the next time that you think about starting your business, or the next time you think about, going on that like big vacation or whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. Life has gotten so comfortable, to go back to what we were talking about before, that we just stop doing hard things. And when we stop doing hard things, we stop proving to ourselves that we even can. And so we all very quickly get put in our own little neat boxes, and like we're prisoners of our own jails. Like we have the key, but we are just staying in our little cells. And you need things like the GORUCK Challenge, it could be a lot of other things, to just sort of punch you in the face and let you know that you can do more than you think you're capable of. There was an article this week, Washington Post maybe, about plebe boxing at West Point, about how all the freshmen at West Point have to take boxing class and whether they should or this and that. And like all the alumni came out and said, yeah, duh, every plebe should take boxing. And it's not because anyone's really learning to be a great boxer. It's because every 18-year-old kid that starts at a place like West Point and is going to be an officer in the United States Army and lead soldiers needs to know what it feels like to be punched in the face, A. And B, they need to know what it feels like to step into a ring and be scared shitless.
Yeah.
And 3 minutes later, come out of the ring and like, hey, guess I'm okay.
I lived.
Maybe my nose is bloody and maybe I'm not going to do so great on my math quiz next hour. But you're fine. And that knowledge, that experience, that understanding that you can be really scared, but when you face up to it, it's never as bad. It's never nearly as bad as what you held it to be in your expectations. That's the thing. So in the GORUCK Challenge is just that. It's scary, like you said, to show up and toe the line at 9 p.m. on a Friday night.
Did you get butterflies or?
Dude, yeah, I did. I have no problem admitting that. I like doing things that give me a little bit of butterflies. I went to a workout a couple days ago for the exact same reason. It was a terrible workout that they had at our CrossFit gym, and I was like, I need to go because I need to hear 3, 2, 1 go, and I need to feel the butterflies because I haven't felt them in a couple of weeks. Like, I need that, but I'm lucky that I've been forced into doing that since plebe boxing. Mm-hmm. Most people are going through their whole life never really being forced to face these kinds of fears. And if you do it, and you just come out on the other side so much better.
Or certainly so many people. I mean, there's certainly too many people.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't say most. Maybe that's not fair. But a large number of people in absolute
And by the way,
terms.
one follow-up is that not only leaders of soldiers in the Army need to know what it feels like to get punched in the face. Like, everyone should know that. And, whether it's literal or metaphorical or whatever, I mean, to put yourself in a position where you're going to fail. I mean, I didn't box. The first time I boxed was in, I think, phase whatever of the Special Forces Q course. It didn't, I got long arms, but
good reach.
I don't really have, there's some other guys that were better boxers than me, and man, I just got beat up, and like, it's just part of it,
Yeah,
learn how to pick yourself back up again.
Yeah, so like I have this saying that I give to people, unsolicited advice. I'm big on unsolicited advice. So
it's free, you get what you pay for. It's coming to you live right now.
So here's the thing. I think fears are they're like vampires. And here's what I mean. If you leave them in the dark, they will slowly but surely just suck the life out of you. They thrive in the dark. If you shine the light of day on them, they're like powerless to do anything against you. And this is true of boxing, of the GORUCK challenge, of like asking the pretty girl out on the date. It doesn't really matter. If you
She wants to go on that date with you.
Yes.
Come on. She wants to.
But if you just like you're giving the fear all the power if you're just leaving it in the dark. Like if you're letting it control your behavior, you are giving it all the power. If you at least confront it head on, and even if you do get punched in the nose, lose your boxing match, roll your ankle, whatever, you're going to realize immediately that you should not have been as afraid of it as you were. And now it no longer has any power over you. And you won't be afraid to do it the next time. And you can move on to the next fear and knock that one off your list. You got to start leaning into these things and facing up to them because they have no power over you if you shine the light of day on them. But you got to show up. You got to actually do it. You can't. There's no book. Did you say this already? There's no book that can teach you how to do these things.
No.
You
can read about other people that did them.
No, you can't learn to drive a manual transmission from a book, right? Correct. You have to feel the clutch engage and feel like, right? You can't drive a stick shift by reading a book. And life is the same way. And the GORUCK challenge is just one way that gives you some practice behind the steering wheel of kind of facing up to your fears and being a little bit better at life. You can't, I like books, I like podcasts, all those things are great, but if you're not doing something, if you're not taking some action to sort of address what's holding you back, you're not getting anything done. You're just, what do they call that? Mental masturbation?
I think they do.
I call it that. You can call it whatever you want.
Cool. All right, let's talk about the patch real quick, and then we'll take a couple questions. So the patch, one of those questions I've gotten a lot is, where did the idea come from that you would give a patch out at the end? And in fact, you were asking me that right before this. So should we talk about the patch? I'm like, I guess we have to. It's going to be a really short answer. The answer is, I kind of didn't know any other way. I mean, you pass the Q course, they give you a Special Forces tab. You got this sort of, crest and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of made sense. We put GORUCK Tough on it. That kind of made sense. And, it was pretty simple, pretty cut and dry. As a lot of times the best things in life, or you don't have to really overthink them. They just sort of happen. And so, yes, it's earned. You can't buy it. And so it's really cool. One of my favorite things is when I see how GRTs, GORUCK Toughs, who have passed, the challenge and see other GRTs in the wild, and they sort of create a friendship, I don't know, a date, if you will, at a bar in an airport or whatever you want to call it. Like, hey, I'm at this airport, at this bar. Come get a free beer if you want.
Isn't that crazy?
It's about a patch.
On the Tough group, like people,
it's about what it represents.
You've never met them, but because they also have completed a GORUCK challenge, they're good in your book, right? Which
they're certainly worth meeting.
Yeah,
but this is the thing, is that people are social creatures. We want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. That's what the Army was about. That's what the best moments in our life, which involve our families, are about, whether it's blood or not. And that's what GORUCK has encapsulated, is that, it's not about us as individuals, it's about us.
The we.
Bomber,
do we have any questions that we want to get to here? All right, send them.
You guys are GRTs too, so if there's no good questions out there, you just shoot us your own. You've been listening to this.
I do want to do a shout out to George Hernandez. He played along today, drinking with y'all.
Very cool. George Hernandez, he played along drinking.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Steve Miller asked, the heavy events, can you kind of compare the light, tough, heavy versus selection on team-based and individual?
Ooh. Yes, I'll take that one. So light, tough, heavy versus selection. So it's not, that's a really, really broad array of events. The light is about 5 hours, the tough is about 12, the heavy is 24 plus, and selection is 48, call it 1 million hours. Okay, so the light, 5-6 hours. I mean,
does not equal easy.
Does not equal.
I've done a fair number of lights. They're not easy.
Does not equal easy, that said, it starts at a reasonable hour on a Saturday. You show up, it's not disruptive in terms of the time. If there's a light here and I'm not, don't have other stuff going on or don't have the kids or, whatever, I will just jump into a light. And I feel like a lot of GRTs feel the same way because you show up for the people. You want to sort of, if one of your friends is going to do something at GORUCK and it's a light, show up. Do it with them. That's kind of what I think a kind of a good rule is. And so the light's accessible. I mean, if you can do a 5K or a 10K or a mud run or whatever, a lot of people will say the light is too easy, right? But mostly because they were just expecting selection to happen in the course of 5 hours, okay? So then you deal with the tough. The tough, AKA the challenge, is our original event. It's kind of it's near and dear to my heart just because it's the original version. And so it's a lot more than just double the time or double the difficulty. It's certainly more. And whether you're a Green Beret or you're an endurance type or you're someone who's just, goes to the gym, it's going to push you. Now, there are levels because you can sort of, even within a team event, you don't always have to volunteer for everything, as you'll find out at a tough, right? Yeah. And so you're sort of pushed by yourself and by your cadre and by the fact that you want your team to do really well. So the tough is the one that I think is the best goal for most people. It's our signature event. And so then you deal with the heavy, 24 hours. It's a lot worse. 24 is a lot worse than 12. 12 is a lot worse than 5 to 6. And so, you're just going to get a lot. It's Dan's baby. He's a third group guy, Gods of War and stuff, right? Another third group guy right there. And it's it's one of those, changing cards real quick. It's no big deal. It's not a problem. The heavy is a significant upgrade from the tough as well. So it gets exponential. These are not linear upgrades. And
a half marathon is more than twice as hard. Or a marathon is more than twice as hard as a half marathon.
Way more.
Because the second half marathon is way harder than the first one was, right?
Way more. Yeah. And so selection is kind of in its own stratosphere. I think it's the toughest endurance event in the world, and I would love for more people to show up. If you've got a really, accomplished background or something, we would love for you to come and give it a try. Maybe we'll incentivize you at some point. But
it's almost nothing like all the rest of
It's nothing. So these are team events. The challenge is a team event. GORUCK selection is not a challenge. It's not a GORUCK challenge. It is an individual event where the cadre's role is to enforce a standard. And the translation of that is you're going to quit.
That you have to meet on your own.
The guidance, yes, there are certain standards for even the light and the tough and the heavy where, if you can't go 5 miles, you probably shouldn't show up for a heavy. You can't. But I guess the point is that the cadre's job is to build a team. It's not to get rid of individuals. It's to empower individuals.
Right.
And so the team also is a very powerful motivator in that as well within the event. Yep. What's next?
Michael from Switzerland said that he wished he had a group of GRTs like that in Switzerland and Europe. And then Ryan Harmon said you should build it. Any thoughts on?
So we're getting a question about European expansion. There's Michael from Switzerland.
Yeah.
So there's some problems with European expansion specific to the event stuff. The first very tactical and tangible one is that we're based here, so doing stuff in Europe is very costly. And that we can overcome that. The bigger issue though is that, we're based and grounded as United States Special Forces guys and that sort of way of life, but also that sentiment within America that does bring people out because they want to learn what that's all about. And that sentiment doesn't hold as well in Europe with even European cadre potentially. It doesn't have the same magic as it does here. So we will absolutely, the day will come when GORUCK has a European office. It will happen, It's just a question of when, not if. And I just think it's going to take a little bit of time because we've got some other big drivers on our plate. But when I go over and lead events in Europe, I love it. I mean, so I find it too bad.
I would say this is where we have to build the bridge between the GORUCK Challenge and rucking, though. So, Bomber, to answer your question, and Mike, to answer your question, I would say there's nothing stopping you from rucking or getting a group of people together to ruck. So that would be sort of my short answer, is that we can't promise any number of GORUCK challenges in Switzerland or Central Europe or whatever, but you can absolutely get out and ruck. And so I would sort of challenge you to tell a few friends about it, point them toward GORUCK or to the show or whatever you need to, because you can, on a moment's notice, pretty much get out, put a little bit of weight in your ruck, and spend the time rucking with friends and start to build kind of a rucking community. In fact, Bomber specifically can help you to build a ruck club if that's what you want to do. So I would recommend you do that.
We're also very able to execute events anywhere in the world. There just has to be enough people. So
you get 40 people to sign up, I'll buy a plane ticket. Problem solved.
Someone will buy a plane ticket.
Someone will be buying.
Right? You're not
probably
even cadre trained up yet, Blaine. You can't go making these promises.
Well, it'll take them that long to get 40 people to sign up.
It might. All right, what else we got?
Katrin H asked about why is there an American flag at each event?
Why is there an American flag at each event? So in the early days, there was not. Every class did not have an American flag because I had not completely understood how awesome the GORUCK Challenge could be if every class had an American flag out front. But the tactical story is that I was leading an event in Okinawa with Cadre Andy and, well, not at the time, but Andy and Big Daddy was also in the class. And Andy had a flag that he brought with him, and we were in Naha, and he pulled it out at the top of Shuri Castle. And he said, this is the flag I carried with me on all of my missions, and I carried it in my body armor or wherever it was, mission dependent. And he brought it out, and he called off another one of the guys. There was a bunch of recon Marines that were in the class, and he had a bunch of he wore some, what do you call it, without the plates, just the weight carrier vest, whatever.
The IBA or whatever.
The IBA, yeah. He wore the IBA, but he had the names of their fallen on it, and they sort of pulled the flag out and read the names up there. I have a small little video clip of it, and so he brought that out a couple times throughout the night, and I don't think that international events are always a place to have an American flag out front, but in America, it makes perfect sense. So I took that and I went back and I said, this is really, really cool. It just brought another level to what it was, and so we just sort of instituted the policy that we would just have an American flag out front, and the community, being the community, really embraced it, and the rest is history.
Good.
Last one is for you, Blaine. Do plants crave electrolytes?
The question is, do plants crave electrolytes? It's what plants crave. That's the answer.
And some sun stuff, right?
Idiocracy reference.
All right.
They killed all the crops because some Gatorade-like company had convinced.
I don't have
farmers that they
TV.
had-
John Travolta, Pulp Fiction. I don't have TV.
It's what plants crave.
All right, good times, guys. Thanks
All
for
right,
tuning
see
in.
you next time.